Hi, hello, and how are you? Come on in and stay a while. It's time to get coached up with another edition of the Coach Scott Field Show. Invite a friend and share this with a friend. This show allows you, the viewer, to connect with some of the best sports people around the globe and some of the top people in the sports entertainment industry. I'm excited to have our guest on with us here this afternoon. I'm your host, Coach Scott Fields. A lot of you people will recognize this face. This is Scot Pollard, 11-year NBA vet, and we're not even going to go into those stories. He did win a championship back in 2008 with the Boston Celtics, but he and his beautiful wife, Dawn, are going to share an interesting health journey with you with Scott's heart transplant. Scot, Dawn, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Oh, glad you guys could take the time, and I know you ran over to Don's uh office to be able to do this, and I'm glad you guys are both healthy enough to join us today.
We are too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, for those who don't know, Scott had a heart transplant. I guess Scott, kind of share with the viewers what it was like. What were your symptoms leading up to this? And I kind of read somewhere, and correct me if we're wrong, was it a virus that had kind of started back in like 2021 that kind of started the ailment and started some of the symptoms?
Yeah. First of all, Don and I have done the for better and worse, rich and poor, all that. We're kind of focusing on the future now. This actually started in 2019. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, and
Wow.
she's had a double mastectomy. I was the caregiver for a very short period of time. Cancer was scared to death of Dawn, and it ran away. So she's cancer free now. And basically, 2 years later, I was talked into getting a flu shot, which I previously had not gotten ever since 1998 when I was traded from the Detroit Pistons to the Atlanta Hawks. Nobody really knows that, but that happened. Got there, got a physical, got a flu shot, got so sick that I got cut from the Atlanta Hawks.
Wow.
And so after that, I just thought, you know what, I'm not going to get a flu shot ever again. Well, obviously the COVID times were happening and they were trying to get me to get a COVID shot. I said, absolutely not. I had just had my annual heart checkup because it is in my family. Um, all the tests were normal. Everything was great in January of March of 2021. And they said, well, if you're not going to get a COVID shot, at least get a flu shot. It'll help you boost your immune system. So I got a flu shot. A couple days later, I'm in the hospital with my heart pounding so hard and so fast, I couldn't get across the room without feeling like I was going to fall down. And I did actually fall down. So that started it. And fast forward without telling the entire story in detail because you don't have enough time. Um, they did several ablations on my heart, which were intended to stop the short circuits. They burn a piece of your heart where their short circuit was happening. That they were saying, okay, this is causing the extra beats, and they call them post-ventricular contractions. So for 3 years there, from March of 2021 until last September of 23, I had several procedures to try to stop it. And finally, they just said, they're not working. We're destroying your heart. We're burning pieces of your heart. You can only do so many of those. And the fact that they keep coming back tells us it's not a virus. This is genetic.
Wow.
So it released a genetic issue that I had already. And as we look back in my father's history, he had a virus years before. He was diagnosed with heart failure. Now, technology is a lot better now, and we have drugs now. And he was on the transplant list. And he died on the transplant list because back then in 1991, your donor had to be your size. Well, find me a donor that's 6'9" and 380 pounds, and I'm going to tell you that that person has heart issues also.
Yeah.
And that's true today. People that are over 300 pounds generally aren't going to be a good donor. Uh, excuse me, for the same reason. However, technology is better now. So my donor didn't have to be my size exactly. Just had to have a good heart that pumped enough blood, and they found one. So
Wow. Wow.
that's
It's interesting to hear you share that story because Scott, I, back in 1986, I actually took an oral polio vaccine that caused my immune system to go awry, and I was bedfast for 9 months. And that's what ended my playing career that got me right into coaching right away. So when I hear vaccines and I hear inoculations and I hear those things just startle me in the first place. So to hear that that could be what triggered, your heart palpitations and things that were going on for you through a flu shot, that can be scary and alarming. Were you feeling a lot of dizziness? Was it like just heart palpitations while you were resting or while you're laying in bed? What were those symptoms so viewers can kind of educate themselves if they too have had this type of reaction or a trigger?
Well, again, this one, I'm not telling people not to get shots. I'm
Right,
not.
right, right, right.
um, I'm just saying I'm not getting any more.
Yeah.
And quick note, I ended up getting a COVID shot and it put me in the hospital
Mm.
for 4 days on steroids. So I'm not getting any kind of shots. They don't
Yeah.
agree with my system. That is not to say you shouldn't. I'm just saying my system does not do shots.
And I appreciate you clarifying that because this is not an anti-vax. This is
No.
just sharing information so we can tell people what your journey was.
Yeah. So my symptoms were, like I said, immediately my heart was pumping out of my chest. They estimated about 10,000 extra beats a day.
Whoa.
Again, post ventricular contractions, not AFib, not little flutters, extra beats. So my heart, it felt like I was walking uphill all day, every day. And she can tell you.
He'd be sleeping, and it sounded like he was running in his sleep, just how fast his heart was beating and how, much he was trying to get air, and he couldn't. It
So
was
were
scary.
there like a lot of deep breaths going on while he was sleeping and resting? I mean, what was the
Not,
breathing pattern like?
not deep breaths. It was like he was running. It was like
Wow.
he was trying to get air and trying to get his, heartbeat to slow down, but it just wouldn't. It was scary.
And as a wife, sitting there, laying there, watching your husband sound like he's running a marathon in bed, are you forcing Scott to get to the doctor, or like, hey, we got to find out what's going on, or what
He
was
was,
going through your mind, Dawn?
I mean, he was already in it with all of his doctors and his team. So it wasn't me saying you need to go to the doctor. It was me laying awake at night, listening to him breathing to make sure he was breathing before he even had his pacemaker defibrillator put in. That was that once he got that device put in, I actually could sleep a little bit better because I knew he had that insurance if his heart were to stop.
Yeah, that's going to kick in and keep it going, right?
Yeah.
Wow, I can't imagine the stress and anxiety. So, Scott, was there a lot of like numbness or tingling in the extremities, in the arms and the legs? Was there like neuropathy? What did it feel like in your body that was going on as your heart is just racing that way?
Just, it felt like I was running uphill all day, every day.
Wow.
I was just tired. My muscles didn't want to do much. There were days when I could feel like, okay, I can go out of the house today and I can go do a few things. I could always just jump in my car and pick up kids because I've been shuttling kids around for years.
Yeah.
My oldest is about to be 26, 27.
Yeah.
So we've been the parents for a long time, but there's a lot of things that I wasn't able to do, and it was just because fatigue. It was just that it was just like I didn't have enough oxygen. I couldn't think straight a lot of times. I was
Brain fog, big time.
big time brain
Oh,
fog. Couldn't tell stories, couldn't remember jokes, and if you know me, you know that that's all I do, stories and jokes. And 5-6 months ago, before transplant, I couldn't even have this conversation with you.
No.
yeah, you would just be out of breath and couldn't have the energy to do it.
Yeah. Yep.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Coughing too.
Yeah.
Coughing.
let me back it up because here you are, a former professional athlete who has trained hard his entire life. So you were used to physical exertion and used to putting demands on your body because your body was your asset that allowed you to have the longevity in your career that you had. Was it alarming to you, Scott, that, oh my gosh, I'm just, I'm dizzy, I'm lightheaded? Did you have like blurry vision, or was it just the constant fatigue that scared you the most?
It was the constant fatigue. It was just because as an athlete, I just kept thinking, well, if I push myself, I'm tired. All I got to do is walk more and I'll get used to this. And I would walk more and then I'm on my butt for a week. And my body was saying, no, that's not what you get to do. You do not get to train like an athlete anymore. You do not get to push this heart. This heart is shutting down. And that was the biggest wake-up call, was September of 2023 when my local cardiologist called me in. He said, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? What about this compared to a year ago? This and this. My questions were all answered with no's or I can't. And he said, we need to start talking about transplant. And the speed that I went down from the point I got listed here in Indiana at the first hospital I got listed at, which is St. Vincent's here. Awesome team, awesome transplant hospital, top rated. But they were very honest with me. And they said, hey, we're probably not going to be able to get you a big enough heart. We just don't do the volume of transplants that other hospitals do. And I had already had a lot of procedures at the University of Chicago Hospital. And so I went up there to get listed, and we went up there and went through the testing there. And that was the end of January of 2024. And then we came home for a weekend and we went to Vanderbilt, same reason. So whatever St. Vincent's does annually, Chicago does about double that. And then Vanderbilt does about double what the University of Chicago does,
Wow.
Which Vanderbilt typically is number one in the country annually for heart transplants. Last year, I think in 2023, Duke beat them by 2, but traditionally Vanderbilt is number one year in and year out. And they did over 500 total organ transplants last year. So Vanderbilt is at the top of technology. They're at the top of volume, which gives them access to more hearts because they know they're going to good donors. Their screening process is very intense. So we're there to get screened, and they looked at me and said, you're not leaving.
By the end of that day, I was pushing him in a wheelchair. He couldn't walk. He couldn't hardly breathe. He was gray. He just looked like the lights were out. And they said, you're not leaving. You're not going home.
So the speed that I went downhill from December when I was officially listed here in Indiana to the end of January, and then first week of February, we're in Nashville. I was really close. And going back to the athlete thing, I'm not thinking that way. I'm thinking a couple days rest, I'll be fine. I just need to catch my breath and then get back at it. It wasn't working. That heart was shutting down, and it was shutting down quick. I didn't realize it until they pulled the tube out of my throat after a transplant. When I woke up and I started singing a stupid song and telling jokes because my brain was back working again. I had oxygen going to my brain.
Finally.
I didn't realize how bad I was until that minute.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching the Coach Scott Field Show. We have Dawn and Scot Pollard with us, who has gone through a heart transplant. They're sharing their experiences with us. I'm finding it fascinating to hear that experience because, Scott, what I hear from you is, I mean, this wasn't the typical male stubbornness. Oh, I'm okay. I'm just going to push through it. This is you listening to your body and being like, you know what? I know this heart is failing me. I'm having medical professionals who are experts in the field telling me, this is what I've got. Were you ever given a timeline to like, hey, if we don't have a heart transplant by such and such month, you're probably not going to be here with us any longer? Were those discussions ever had with you as well?
There were vague suggestions by all three teams here, Chicago and Vanderbilt. But at Vanderbilt, when they hospitalized me, they said, with no doubt, you're not leaving without a new heart. So they didn't say, hey, we're going to discharge you and we'll keep an eye on. They said, you're not leaving. They sent me right to the emergency room because there was no room in the ICU. And then we went from the emergency room, which was unbelievable. That's a whole different podcast.
Right. Oh my goodness.
They finally found us room in the ICU, and we got put in the ICU that day. They don't speak in definites because not only is every one of us one of one, but I'm the tallest person they've ever transplanted. So they don't give me any prognosis. Even now, they just say, we just want to keep this heart beating as long as possible.
Right.
That's my prognosis. So
Wow.
am I going to live another 10 years? Do I have
I'm
5?
saying yes.
Do I have?
There you go. That's right. So
I feel like I've got 50 more now compared to how I felt last year and the 3 years up to that. But is this, every day I wake up, I'm winning.
yeah, that's right. And I can honestly say, this is just not me just throwing out. I can see a difference in your color. I can see a difference in your energy. I can hear it in the tone of voice that you're using now. After, seeing many of these, your videos with updates, I think it's amazing the steps that you've gone through. But I want to backtrack for a second. So Don, when they say, okay, you're not leaving here without a heart, you're a nurturer, you're a caretaker, this is your husband. He's done the same for you through your breast cancer, which is wonderful that you've made it through that. What do you do? Do you get right in survival mode? Are you calling and texting family, hey, we're not leaving, let's get kids taken care of, let's let family members know that hey, they need to come visit, or what's going through your mind at that time, Don, when they're saying, hey, he's not leaving here without a new heart?
It was immediate survival mode. It was everything you said, just getting everything lined up. There was no time to grieve and really process. It was just like, okay, time to get to work, time to get everything in order. That's just how I am, though. I took my moments here and there to grieve in my own way, but it was always how am I going to take care of my business, my kids, first and foremost, my kids, that's number one. We're 4.5 hours away from them.
Right.
Our home, our hairless cat, all these world that just upside down, not knowing when he's going to get a heart, not knowing when he's going to get released. I mean, there were so many unknowns. And so just trying to put it all together as best I could while still showing strength for him,
By the
it was
way,
hard. It was really hard.
By the way, she closed several deals from Nashville. She's a real estate agent. Closed several deals from Nashville remotely. People that had no idea she was not in town. And on top of that, handled all of that like a boss, the family stuff, rented a 2-bedroom apartment across the street from the hospital so visitors could come and stay and spell and
Wow.
to stay and come visit and then go back to the place to stay. And that ended up being our home when I got discharged from the hospital because she never left my side. She never went and stayed in that apartment.
I slept in a tiny little chair that pulled all the way flat, and I never left his room.
Wow.
Not a single.
Where's the cape with the S? That's what I want to know.
There was no choice for me.
That's right.
It wasn't even a thought.
Right. Well, and I'm assuming that even though you may have fear and anxiety and just the unknown, and yet you're taking care of business, you're lining things up, you have to be strong in front of Scott so that he's also not getting worked up like, oh my gosh, I have these fears. So talk about what were those conversations like while you're waiting to hear we got to wait on a heart, one that's going to work for you and your body.
Yeah.
It was a lot of me being terrified that it wasn't going to happen, and a lot of her saying, "You're going to be fine because I'll kill you.
This is going to happen. Don't worry." Oh.
She said, "If you die, I'm going to kill you." So
yeah, there you go. Don't have time for that, right? So
no.
obviously, you're an advocate for donations for organs, and things like that. But yet also, let's be realistic. The elephant in the room, someone had to die to be able to have a heart to transplant into you. Have you learned who the donor was or the family of the donors? Do they share that information, or is that something that you're interested in to want to meet that family or those people?
So because of HIPAA laws, there are no details given about the donor. Other than, in my case, they said it was a big man. But you have the ability to write a letter to your donor family, and they have the same ability. If they felt like, hey, we want to know who all the donors are, recipients are of all the donated organs that our loved one gives out. Donor families have that ability too. But what they do say is, obviously, this person didn't live a long life. It wasn't a 100-year-old man that died and I got his heart.
Yeah.
So most donor families do not respond because they don't want to relive the tragedy that is the losing of their loved one.
And that's traumatic, very traumatic.
Yeah. And completely understand.
Yeah.
So when we wrote the letter to my donor family, we acknowledged that. We said, we understand that we don't know the pain you're going through. And we don't expect a response other than to let you know how much your gift means to me. Obviously, it's the gift of life to my family, to my kids, because literally right now, I know as fast as I was going downhill, I would not be here. Right now, it's July 16th, 15th, whatever, of 2024. February 16th, I was given a gift of extension of my life. I know I would not be here by now without a new heart, without this gift that this person gave me. So, we're waiting. My letter's been sent for a couple weeks now. But again, not expecting a response.
Yep.
Because the odds are we're not going to get one. And again, completely understand, but I just want everybody to know, if you do happen to know, thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my family's heart.
Scott, I kid you not. I got chills and I could almost tear up because I hear the heartfelt message that you're just now sharing with the viewers. I guess I want to go back because it's like there's so many layers to the onion. How many medications were you taking before the transplant? And like, were you on oxygen or, all the IVs to keep your strength up and all the tests that they have to run before the transplant? What was that life like, say 72 hours before you even knew that there was a heart coming to you both?
So in the hospital, they had me hooked up to stuff.
He had a Swan catheter that had all kinds of IVs just going straight to it, right here. And yeah, there was continual drugs being pumped through him, just drugs to make the water come off of him. And he lost like 27 pounds of liquid. His heart wasn't pumping any of that fluid out, so they gave him diuretics and to take the strain off of his heart. But yeah, there were a lot of meds.
Was feeding all done intravenously, or were you able to eat, or were you did you have tubes for oxygen, or kind of share what that, Dawn, when you walked into that room and you see him all hooked up, what did you see?
Well, there was a point where he was getting prepped basically for, a potential heart to come. So that was just, he had to walk around the ICU floor and keep his strength going, but he was connected to a lot of tubes and a lot of machines and stuff. He could eat, he could talk, all of that stuff. But yeah, different view after his transplant was a completely different image that I'll never forget.
So share that image. What is that? I mean, probably just, was it skeletal? Was it gray? Was it, of course, lack of circulation, less oxygen? What did you see in that bed right before the transplant?
Well, he was coherent and alert before transplant. He was just sitting in the hospital waiting, but he was still being pumped with IV medications and stuff. So Scott was always coherent, could talk to us, joked. We had visitors. He was just in the hospital waiting. However, he was on a lot of medicines to help his heart pump right, help, drain fluids off of his body and all that. So there was a lot of just waiting. We were waiting, not knowing. So from the moment he got admitted to the ICU, to the moment he went in before his heart transplant, he was alert. There was a lot of medicines to help him kind of recover from when he first was admitted to the ICU. Yeah. And it was just a lot of waiting, a lot of monitoring, testing all day, all night, just waiting. We didn't know. We had no idea, how long it would take. But
unbelievable. And so, Scott, while you're laying there in bed, being pumped full of fluids and taking medications, to be 100% transparent, what's your thought process oh my gosh, is this ever going to happen? Or what take us there.
I'm more than 60-40, probably 80-20, thinking I'm going to die. Again, my dad died when I was 16.
Yeah.
Basically, what we think now is probably the same thing. I'm alive because technology is better now than in 1991, and that's basically the end of it. So I'm thinking I'm too big. I'm not going to find a heart that's big enough to pump for me because it didn't happen for my dad. I have real life experience of that. So that fear was there and it was very real and it was just sitting on my shoulders.
Oh, and
But
so I don't mean to interrupt. So your kids are there, they're visiting, they're probably trying to, stay positive for you, and you're probably trying to stay positive and strong for your kids. Talk about those conversations right before transplant.
yeah, I mean, it was an internal feeling because I didn't even want Dawn to know that I was pretty sure I was going to die. And I was trying to say goodbye without saying it outright.
Yeah.
Um, and also, I was just terrified of the surgery. I didn't know if it was going to be successful. Dr. Shaw, the man, he is the absolute best in the world. He does so many
The
transplants.
Michael Jordan of heart transplants.
He doesn't even think about it. He's just like, yeah, that's what I do. It's no big deal, and it is a big deal. He knows it's a big deal, but it's not like you don't ever feel like you're in the hands of a person that's nervous about anything. He's done it so much. He's just like, whatever happens in there, I got you. And you
Yeah.
just get that comfort. So yeah, as I'm having those conversations with my kids, I'm saying, hey, I'll be fine. And we had a dry run actually on my birthday. They said, watch the Super Bowl on the 11th, no food after midnight. You're getting a heart tomorrow on my birthday, the 12th, and February 12th, obviously. And they, because it was day after Super Bowl,
Yeah.
So day of, we're prepped, we're ready, and time keeps clicking. I'm saying, thanks for coming, kids. All four of my kids made it down in town to say, love you, whatever, and ended up not happening. It wasn't the right donor, and
It was rough.
It didn't work, and we just went.
You're on a. This is
Oh,
happening.
I can't even imagine what that felt like.
And so
really
they said, don't eat yet. There's another one. And then about an hour later, they said, that one's not working either. Go ahead and have some food. So we went back to just waiting mode. And then they said a few days later, all right, this is it. This is the one. And we just thought it was weird. We had two-pronged feeling there. I think we both did. Yeah. That A, it was for sure the one, but B, we aren't getting very excited because we were just so confident that it was the heart. We just thought, okay, this is it. And we were just resigned more than excited. It was just like, okay, this is actually happening this time. Like we just knew it. We felt that one. And it was on the 16th. And, I didn't wait nearly as long as a lot of people I know personally had to wait or are waiting right now. But excuse me, that's a testament to two things. One, I got really sick at the end. I was the second highest status you can be is status 2. Status 1 means you're on a machine that's pumping your heart for you, and you need a heart within hours or you're not going to be around. So I was just below that at status 2, but hospitalized and need one. That's one factor. The other factor is because of my size, that heart jumped up the list because it was too big for normal people. It was too pumping, that heart was meant for somebody bigger. Yep. And so a normal sized person is not really the ideal recipient for a heart that's pumping like that. So my heart was pumping about 3 liters at the end now. Now we're all different, right? 3 liters is probably a lot for a normal sized person. But for me, when I was in the NBA, it was probably pumping closer to 15 to 30 between there, they said.
Wow.
I was pumping about 3 liters before transplant. Right now, it's pumping 9.
Wow.
I'm 3 times getting, like, that's why the oxygen is in my brain and I can form a sentence now.
Right.
Before
you even have the energy to have the conversation. It's a miracle. It truly is a miracle. And like you say, the advancements in technology that you're able to share this journey with us. So So Dawn, let me ask you this. You now know that the heart's coming. What was your last words to Scott before they wheeled him off, before the Michael Jordan of heart surgeons goes in to do what he does innately?
Oh my gosh. I think it was, you got this. I was just a mess, obviously.
Oh, oh,
Um, but yeah, it was a blur. It was a blur.
I can
Watch.
imagine. And so so
You know.
now you're notified, they're wheeling you back. The heart is going to be, they've done their testing. Scott's, passed all of his checks, all the boxes are checking. How many hours did the surgery take? And Dawn, what was that like for you as you're sitting there waiting probably hour by hour, waiting to hear anything? Because now you're just on faith alone, right? So take us through that moment of, okay, he's being wheeled back. I've kissed him. I've said, Scott, you got this. How many hours was it? And what was that like waiting again?
Well, I mean, it felt like a eternity, of course, but
Sure.
you know, it's really weird. I was just telling Scott this the other day. I kind of blocked out that part. My sisters were with me. Our 8-year-old son was there, and I just kind of took a breath of like relief that he was finally getting a heart, but I also kind of just blocked it out. I don't even remember right now thinking back. Where did we go? I know my sisters took me to probably go get some food or something, keep my
Yeah.
mind off of it. But I was
It's just too
exhausted.
traumatizing. I'm assuming it's just there's so much fear and anxiety and again unknown, right?
Right. The,
Oh,
the surgery, they called me around 12:35, telling me that it was go time and that the heart had arrived. And so when they called me the next time, it was around 4:55 p.m. So in that time is what it took, and I didn't get to see him till about 6:30 p.m. So
wow. So was the heart flown in from another state or do you know what that process was?
oh yes, as far as we know, yeah, they had to go out and get the heart, but
But
Wow.
we don't know
we
where.
Wow.
don't exactly.
So Scott, what do you last remember before they open your chest to change the heart? I mean, I'm sure that you're already on drugs. You probably see the lights above you, and you're hearing monitors, and you're hearing anesthesiologists, and you're hearing nurses and doctors talk with you. What do you last remember on your last breath with your failing heart?
None of that.
Okay.
We were in my room in the ICU, and the nurse came in and said, "Are you okay? Do you need anything?" And I said, "Yeah, I need something to calm down. I'm freaking the fuck out." And
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
gave me a little calm down juice, and that's the last thing I remember. I didn't even remember saying goodbye to her. I don't remember getting to the OR. The last memory I have is being in the room with her sisters, our 4-year or our 8-year-old, our fourth kid, and we were just talking, telling stories, just trying to wait. And I was panicked. And they said, "Do you need to calm down?" I said, "Yes, I need to calm down. I'm terrified.
Yeah.
I'm like, I was a little nervous that I was never."
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And
That's my
again,
last memory.
I can't even imagine what that had to feel like. And so, okay, you're under. What's the first thing you remember when you finally came to for
I
Scott?
I wanted that breathing tube out of me so bad, and they had my hands strapped down for a reason,
Well,
because
so you don't pull
so
the
you
tube
don't
out.
try to pull it out.
Yeah.
And I was trying to pull it out. I was bound to the
Well,
hospital bed.
and before surgery, we kind of rehearsed this a little bit. We both were
Yep.
like, okay, this is gonna suck. You're gonna have to just take some slow, deep breaths. Remember that. Try to remember that.
Yeah.
And he did really well though. The breathing tube came out at 5:30 in the morning, and he
Hand signal.
yeah. Well, we also before surgery, I said you need to give me some sort of sign to let me know that you're there when you come out of surgery. So we
Oh.
had a couple obscene ones that I won't repeat, but the one
You okay.
the one that we decided was the shaka breath. So he's got his wrist tied down, and I took a video of he just goes like that, and that's when I knew that he was there and he was all good.
Wow.
So
What a relief
yeah,
that had to be for you, Don, to know that, oh, he's breathing on his own, things are working, and I'm sure doctors are giving you updates and reports. I, I can't even imagine you had to be overwhelmed, I'm sure. Your heart had to be racing, your blood pressure had to be going crazy. How do they tell you, hey, the surgery's over, now we're just waiting, he's going to be in recovery? That had to be music to your ears to hear those things from the doctors.
right. Well, when they called me at around 4:55, they said he's out of surgery, he's going to recovery. You can see him as soon as we get him settled back into the room, and that was around 6:30 that I finally walked into the room, and it was just me and him, and I was just like floored by
Looking for
what
that sign.
well, that sign didn't come until probably about, 5 in the morning. So I didn't leave his side from the moment I saw him. I sat right next to the bed. I stayed awake the whole night until 5:30 when they took the breathing tube out. I was there rubbing his feet, telling him to relax,
Oh,
just I didn't leave his side, waited for that, and I got it. And then
oh,
yeah,
wow. Eh, So, of course, Scott, you're not able to communicate because of the tubes and everything going in, and yet your mind. Don, were you talking with him before he became
oh yeah.
conscious? And do you remember any of those conversations?
Yeah, I was just rubbing his arm and just saying, give me your sign. Let me know you're there. Are you?
Yeah.
And,
Oh,
just telling him everything's all right. And, the nurses, I mean, everybody over at Vanderbilt, they're just amazing. They kept me informed on what this was doing, what that was doing. What is this? I mean, he had a tower of just drugs and tubes, and they were just great at telling me every little thing they were doing. And, lessening his breathing tube, his breathing machine. And, it was pretty cool.
so they walked you through the process that you now could probably be that care nurse in that facility.
They are amazing.
I
Oh, man.
can't say enough
Wow.
about the staff at Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
They're just
Oh,
every single person there was an absolute amazing
Rock star.
person. Like they were the best at their job. Every single
oh,
person. It didn't matter day, nighttime, whatever department we were in, whether it was the high risk post surgery, and then we got to go to a step down room. I mean, every single person at Vanderbilt is incredible. They are
trained professionals.
incredible facility. I can't
I
say enough
mean,
about the whole place.
think how wonderful that is now, because I'm sure your perspective has changed a little bit, Scott, since you've gone through a near-death experience, and now to know that they were trained professionals, they had the bedside manner, they kept everybody calm, they kept everybody informed as possible. I just can't imagine what those things are like. And I just commend you both for taking the time to share these intimate details with the viewers. And now the surgery's over. You've got a foreign heart in there that the body hopefully will not reject. Take us through now. I mean, because this is a weeks and weeks of process of make sure the heart's not going to be rejected, and more medications. What types of medications were you on immediately after the surgery? And Don, how much were you a part of that process to make sure that, watching over him and communicating for him? And take us through the first, 4 or 5 days after the surgery.
Oof. It was, I mean, it was instant that he felt better. He came out of surgery singing, I left my heart in San Francisco, but it was San Fran, Nashville. He had switched the words around like he tends to do with every single song. Um,
That's Scott at his best right there.
but he felt great afterwards. I mean, he had some ups and downs for sure, but as far as the breathing and talking and all that, it was amazing.
I, I,
Um,
I bet you're like, I've got my Scott back.
yeah. Oh
Oh,
yeah. I mean,
wow.
yeah, it was pretty instantaneously right after I was like, this is going to work. This is good. He's going to be fine.
Oh,
But
so Scott, tell us what you felt physically, because I can only imagine if your heart is only pumping so many, quarts per day, and you have no energy, and you've got the brain fog, and all of a sudden now you've got this healthier heart pumping blood and oxygen through your body, could you feel immediately like, oh my gosh, I'm already 50% better?
Yes, I 100% felt better mentally, breathing.
Wow.
And it took us a couple weeks before we realized I stopped coughing because I had a chronic cough from congestive heart failure. Uh,
Ah,
your heart doesn't pump enough
yep.
the fluid out of your lungs, so it tends to accumulate, and you just get this nagging because you just always got a little extra fluid in your lungs. And a couple weeks later, we're like, I haven't coughed since surgery.
Wow.
And so, like
Wow.
today, I had a couple, but my throat's dry.
Right.
But it's that. So it was immediate. As soon as they pulled the tube out, I sang "I Left My Heart in San Fran, Nashville" like a
I love that. I love that. Ladies and gentlemen, again, you're watching the Coach Scott Field show. We've got Dawn and Scot Pollard sharing the journey of the heart transplant, and we're now to the part where it's amazing, Scott, that you have the personality that you've gotten through this, and now you're up. And so was it scary for you when you first grabbed your IV and probably had to start walking around the hallways, or you probably already felt like, oh my gosh, I already feel 1,000 times better than what I did pre-surgery than post-surgery. You probably feel like you wanted to take off and go running.
well, not exactly running, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of damage to this body from all the stuff I did before hearts were even an issue.
Yeah.
But that first walk after surgery, which was what, less than 24 hours after I
24
woke
hours.
up after surgery, I took a walk, and I don't remember it, but I've seen it on video because she filmed it. So that's my memory of it. Other than feeling like a freaking zombie, just like I had just been hit by a truck. Everything hurt. Everything wouldn't move. Everything was heavy. I felt like I weighed 1,000 pounds, and I was just like, I don't care about any of that. I'm alive, and I'm
Yeah.
going on a walk, and I'm gonna get better. And so
Oh,
I forced myself to ignore. Like, that's where that athlete mentality that I've had my whole life, the competitor in me, has done me well in the rehab process, because now I can push my heart. I couldn't push my old heart, but now I can push it. This thing responds. This one is working. And excuse me. So I'm able to push that, and that's what has really helped my rehab to get back to doing as much as I can do for the rest of my life, which is about where I'm at right now. Um, the drugs are constant; they're forever.
yeah.
I'm never going to be drug free. I'm always going to be on these drugs every 12 hours. I have alarms set. They're still adjusting doses. I give blood almost every week to check the dosage levels in my system, to check my kidney function, which is a big issue because the drugs really attack kidneys and liver.
Yep. Yep.
My kidneys are doing much better, but they're not great yet. So that's a concern. I'm actually giving blood again. What's today? Tuesday. Oh, by the way, today is 5 months post transplant. Today is the day.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Wow.
so
So when you're doing those blood labs, they're actually checking for toxins in the blood because of all the side effects from medications as well. So that's why you have to keep such a watchful eye and have all those labs, correct?
no, they're checking for the drugs themselves in my system,
Ah,
as well as my normal levels of minerals, potassium. Magnesium's been a problem. I take a ton of magnesium, and I'm trying to supplement it with a natural diet that has more foods and magnesium, high in magnesium. Um, they're checking to make sure the drugs are working, and one of them in particular has been working a little too well. It sits in my system, and that's because my kidneys aren't working that great, but it's because the drug causes your kidneys not to work very great. So
yeah. So you need a medication for the medication.
the blood checks are to check the drugs that they're giving me, that I'm not poisoning myself, but that they're effective enough,
Yeah.
because they have to be in this little window.
Yep.
Those things tend to calm down after 6 months, hopefully after a year. My dosages kind of just normalize, and that's just what I'm on for the rest of my life.
Wow.
That's the goal right now. It's still, we'll see, but you know, it's getting better. It's getting easier. It's more of a habit, a routine to take the drugs, and also to avoid foods that I can't eat. There's a ton of food. People are always like, "Wait, have you tried this supplement? It's really good for your liver. It's really good for your kidneys."
Yeah.
Thank you for your concern, but I'm
Yeah.
going to go stick with the teams I have
Yeah.
that are all watching me, that are the smartest people on the planet regarding heart failure, heart transplant, and recovery from both.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm gonna. It's really nice when people suggest things, but not one thing goes in this body that is not okayed by this transplant team. There's
There
no
you go.
homeopathic.
I don't blame you. Good for you. So, how many weeks did you have to stay in Nashville before you could migrate back up to Central Indiana and the Indianapolis area? Several weeks, I'm assuming, or months before you're able to leave Nashville because of the constant checking, correct?
I think we finally, he finally got to go home. What is it, like April 9th or April 4th, I think. But we still had to go back down. He was getting checked every week. It was just, he could come home and see the kids, the house, you know, be
And
back
now,
here.
yeah, now we're down to once a month. Uh,
So
August.
2 months.
Yeah, it was about 2 months post transplant that we were in Nashville.
Yeah, and again, thank goodness, Don, that you rented that place right across the way to where,
Right.
you know, that was your home away from home just to
Yeah.
get through this process to check the boxes to make sure it was safe for him to be able to travel to and have the energy to be able to, you know, go back. So how much, you know, physical therapy, occupational therapy, those kind of things did you have to go through just to prove to the doctors that, hey, you know, we can leave the hospital?
So in the hospital, the biggest thing was being able to uh, prove that I could walk around a little bit, uh, dress myself, you know, basic tasks. You know,
Yeah,
can you go to the
daily
bathroom?
activities.
Yeah. And then also, this heart didn't wake up all the way immediately. It was in a little bit of shock. And so the top was working, but the bottom was not. So they actually
Oh.
pacemaker. So I have a pacemaker now that makes sure that this heart is beating, and it does really well. And the hope is that it'll wake up all the way. I have another check of the heart and the pacemaker in a couple weeks, and it's every time I've gone in, they've lowered the pacemaker. It was at 130 beats right after the transplant. Then they dropped it to 120. By the time I left the hospital, it was about 100.
Wow.
And right now it's set to 80. So
Wow.
still pretty,
Wow.
but it's training the heart to beat at the level it's beating. And I've noticed lately, because I have my own pulse, obviously,
Yep.
checker. And I've noticed lately that there's times where I'm not doing much and it's sitting at 90. So my heart's pumping on
Man.
its own without the pacemaker. Because if it was pumping below 80, it'll make sure it pumps at 80. But if it's pumping above 80, the pacemaker's not doing that. So that's
Yeah.
good. It means it's working. Self-diagnosis there. We'll wait for the for sure doctor to
Yeah.
tell us next month when they check the device. Because what they do is they turn the device down. And then if the heart's pumping, then we know it's working. If it's not, I go to sleep.
Yeah. Right.
The lights go out. It's really scary.
Yeah.
Wow.
When it wasn't pumping, they turned it down, and I just went, and well,
He started rocking and his eyes got really big and he wasn't there.
yeah.
Oh,
So
and I'm sure there had to be some PTSD for both of you through that. Like, uh-oh, what just happened? And then the stressors kick in again and more triggers.
yeah. But anyway,
Yeah.
they inserted the pacemaker, and that was the final thing that was allowed me to get out of the hospital.
Wow. That
Because they wanted to make sure it was
phenomenal story. You know, we've got like 3-4 minutes. What message as a couple do you have for other people on a transplant waiting list or potential donors who are, you know, juggling back and forth? Do they want to be donors, or share just share a heartfelt message with the viewers of the show today?
For me personally, you know, I had never been a donor. I didn't know why. I think I was just not informed. It was a scary thought. was kind of creepy in a way. And, unfortunately, I was never a donor until now. I am now. And it makes sense. It makes sense to be a donor because you could save so many lives. And I mean, I should have did it way earlier, but I am now. That's what matters. I am now.
Interesting.
And yeah, to help somebody live when I can't, that's all I want. That's what I want.
That's the greatest gift of all. I mean, you
Right.
talk about an act of service. There's no greater act of service than to
Right.
be a donor, in my opinion. But to have you share your experience, to know that now because of the awareness and what you've gone through, it's a powerful message. How about you, Scott?
To piggyback that idea, it used to bother me as well. And now it really it makes sense. You don't need those organs anymore. If you're gone, you don't know people are harvesting all of those organs. But what you can do is pass with the knowledge that you're helping save lives and also improve lives, because people forget the biggest organ we have is skin. And there are a lot of people living with burn injuries that could really use your skin. They had surgery to remove cancer, and they don't have enough skin to cover what they had to lose because of their melanoma. And you can help them heal and live a better, more normal life because of your skin. And that's what the biggest one that I forgot about. I didn't even think about that. I was just thinking about internal organs. But when you talk about it, it's dozens of people that you could either save their life or improve their life through your donating of your organ tissue. So that's the part that is really eye-opening to me, because I didn't think about it in those terms. I wasn't educated, like Dawn said. And for people that are on the fence about it, just think to yourself, am I taking them with me? Am I that selfish? I don't need them in the ground. I'm getting cremated myself. They're probably going to have to take my pacemaker out so it doesn't blow up in the oven. But
you know, I can't thank you guys enough for sharing your time, for sharing the experience, for sharing your knowledge. I hope it wasn't too traumatic for you to revisit or too emotional for you to revisit that. But I think it's a powerful gift and message that you guys are so selflessly sharing for the viewers of this show, because I think it's powerful. And thank you so much for both of your time. And Scott, I'm whatever I can do to help or help spread the message. I want to be in your corner. I'm a phone call away, and I can't wait for us to get back together, and hopefully whether you come to Utah or I go back to Indiana to visit my family, would love to get together and just, man, you're a walking blessing and a testimony to what donor is all about.
well, thank
Absolutely.
you. And I do want to say two things before we finish up today. One is congratulations on being inducted into the Hall of Fame in Indiana. Well
Thank
done, sir.
you.
That's very impressive, and
Thank you.
you should be notified around the world. But
Aw.
also, the other thing is we are going to continue our mission of increasing awareness for donorship. And also, ESPN has filmed a documentary and is currently still filming a documentary about this.
Oh,
So it's not going to be out probably until 2025. They're doing it right. They're not trying to rush it out there. But there's a lot more to be done. But just wanted to, put that out there that people can see a whole perspective, because those guys were actually in surgery. They filmed the entire thing. So
wow.
there's going to be another entire perspective when that comes out. And again, we just did it for no other reason than to help people become aware of what donors can do. And you don't have to be a super person to give other people life.
I love it. And again, thank you for sharing this with our show and with the viewers. This is just the appetizer. The entree is coming. But wow, I think it's amazing that you guys had the foresight to be able to say, hey, let's do this to help serve others. So bless you both for that. And thank you so much again for your time, you guys.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
All right. God bless. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Bye.